Shadow Hack. Chapter 121, Crazy. According to the information written in the Book of Monsters, harpies were black crystal humanoid monsters from true fifth dimension. Due to their human-like shape, they were quite weak and comparatively easy to kill. But this evaluation was just theoretical. Same as with the dwarf witches, if they assembled in large numbers, then killing them wouldn't be so easy. Rather, they would become extremely frightening and even take one's life. The harpies were classified into 5 different types based on the abilities they could use. The first type was the windblade harpy. They would use their whole body's flux energy and compress it into swift and sharp wind blades, whose piercing power was extremely high. The black crystal flux armor could be pierced by a couple of them. But the most important point was that not only could this type of harpies release wind blades after compressing flux energy, they could also control their trajectory around themselves. In case there were a large number of these wind blade harpies, dealing with them would certainly become a headache. The second type were the flame harpies. Each and every one of these could congeal soccer ball-sized fireballs with which they would then bombard their enemies. When they gathered in large numbers, the fluxers facing them would feel as if they were dealing with a major artillery squad. Their offensive power was much more dreadful than that of windblade ones. Third type, shrieking harpies, who could do nothing except shriek loudly. But this type of sound attack was one of the most feared abilities. This was because the harpies' loud shrieks could directly attack the consciousness sea of a fluxer. Even the defense of crystal armor could offer only a small resistance against such attacks. If a fluxer hadn't cultivated flux methods which specialized in strengthening his consciousness sea, the only choice for them would be to run as far as possible upon sighting these creatures. The fourth type were the speed talon harpies, which were extremely fast and had sharp talons. They would always conceal themselves and wait for the best moment to ambush and kill the enemy. If a fluxer let his guard down for just one moment, they would fly down at a great speed and ruthlessly slash at them using their sharp talons. This often led to dug-out eyes, or hearts. The fifth type were the heart devil harpies, who could influence the mind of a fluxer. If the shrieking harpies represented a big headache to any fluxer facing them, then these heart devil harpies were like vicious death gods. They could issue a shriek of a particular frequency which could greatly magnify the devil of one's heart. These heart devil harpies killed the most people present above the 10th level of the Tower of Glory compared to any other type. Once they released a shriek, then the greed in a fluxer's heart would be greatly magnified and the challenger would lose all reason. There would be only one thought left in their mind, and it would be to earn as many tower badges as they could acquire, causing them to keep clearing one level after another until they died. Fortunately, Li Yunmu had obtained the Book of Monsters from Lunuja. Otherwise, if he would have encountered any of these creatures without having any information on them, then he probably would have also been knocked out. System, is there any method to resist against these heart devil harpies? Li Yunmu had barely managed to voice his question when the 9 harpies flew towards him. He lightly waved his hand, commanding the group of underworld ravens to join the bat. Merely 9 harpies weren't worth mentioning. Regardless of whether he used the group of 51 underworld ravens, who had already broken through Silver Crystal Layer, or depended on his own defense, there wasn't any need for him to be afraid. Even if the first 4 types of harpies attacked in coordination, or even if Li Yunmu's mind was attacked by the shrieking harpies, causing him to lose all will to resist so he didn't move from his position, their wind blades and fireballs and talon attacks would still be unable to break his defense. Unfortunately, he still couldn't confront the last type, the heart devil harpies, as they would use whispering to directly influence his heart. The only reason why he had entered the Tower of Glory was to earn tower badges. So if he lost control of himself because of his increasing greed, then it wouldn't be long before he lost his little life as well. The Tower of Glory had 108 levels altogether, so Li Yunmu couldn't be arrogant and think that he could go on a killing spree and kill everything in his way to advance higher and higher. However, what he was afraid of, happened. The harpies flew extremely quickly, and before Li Yunmu could learn some method to deal with the heart devil type, they were on him. One of the harpies flying towards him suddenly raised her head and shrieked. The shockwave produced by the ear-piercing shriek attacked Li Yunmu's consciousness. Once Li Yunmu received a mental attack, his whole body instantly became dull and his reaction speed also slowed down greatly. It was a shrieking harpy. Li Yunmu thought in his heart that this wasn't good, but then something even worse happened. Suddenly, from behind him, a strange and soft female voice whispered in his ear. When Li Yunmu heard the slow, soft mumbling sound, an intense desire rose in his heart. Tower badges, he had to obtain even more tower badges. Ding, the host's present condition is extremely dangerous. Suggestion, use ability points to resist the mental attacks of shrieking harpies and heart devil harpies. Every second of resistance will use up 2 ability points. Do you agree? Ding, since host's consciousness has been attacked and considering that he's unable to reply, the system will itself decide to use ability points to assist host in resisting the mental attacks. After being upgraded to the 3rd layer, the system had become extremely reliable. Since Li Yunmu wasn't able to reply to its question, it promptly decided to use the ability points to remove the injuries his consciousness had received. However, just as the system prepared to deduct the required amount of ability points, the small shadow female ancestor, who had been sitting on Li Yunmu's shoulder, finally reacted. A trace of anger appeared on her little face. She could sense that Li Yunmu, who had formed a contract with her, was in pain. Instantly, the little Li Ying slightly opened her small mouth and lightly sucked in the air. Immediately, the mental attacks launched by the shrieking harpy and heart devil harpy completely disappeared without any trace. This was because these mental attacks were completely absorbed by little Li Ying. Ding, danger averted. The plan to use ability points to assist host in resisting the mental attacks has been cancelled. When Li Yunmu's consciousness sobered up, more than a dozen seconds had already passed. As for the 9 harpies flying towards him, they were instantly eliminated by the underworld ravens and 11 tower badges were lying on the ground. As for the injuries suffered by Li Yunmu's consciousness, they had been absorbed by little Li Ying. Although the mental attacks would give a major headache to any fluxer, but for Li Ying, they were a tonic, a nourishment. She had absorbed the prayers and beliefs of the Shadow clan to be born, so these few sinister mental attacks were just like cereals for her. What happened? I narrowly escaped. Li Yunmu was both happy and frightened. From this event, he learned a lesson that only with high defense of his physical body he wouldn't be able to avert all disasters. He instantly made a firm resolution to scrape together enough space elements to buy an A-grade flux method related to strengthening his consciousness. However, wasn't Li Ying's performance too heaven-defying? She lightly sucked on the air and the mental attacks of both types of harpies were completely absorbed by her. She really was worthy of being called an existence possessing almost as formidable an inner vitality as deities. With the existence of little Li Ying, Li Yunmu was now even less afraid of the threats at higher levels. He rushed towards to the next level, leading his 51 silver crystal underworld ravens. 12th level cleared, 13th level cleared, 14th level cleared. Finally, when he reached the 15th level, he encountered a golden layer harpy boss harpy witch. However, this time Li Yunmu wasn't in any rush and decided to have a little fun with this mini boss. He walked over to her escorted by a black cloud formed by 51 underworld ravens. After 10 minutes, the 59 second layer harpies and harpy witch of the 15th level had been completely wiped out by the underworld ravens. Naturally, the harpy witch dropped the highest number of tower badges, 30 of them. Meanwhile, the people on the outside still hadn't recovered from the shock of Li Yunmu passing through 10th level and the shocking news of him having titles conferred to him. Yet right then, the Fluxer Association made another 3 times repeated global announcement that Li Yunmu passed the 15th level. In a short while, all Fluxers in the 6 continents were left completely astonished. 15th level? This extraordinary person called Li Yunmu was surprisingly still advancing? Crazy, this is simply crazy. Chapter 122, Great Transformation. At this moment, Li Yunmu was obviously unaware of the rules of Tower of Glory. Similarly, he also didn't know that the outside world was going crazy because of him advancing past the 15th level. Especially the Fluxers of the Cloud City War Zone. After confronting the fact that Li Yunmu was so formidable, all of them sensed an invisible pressure suppressing them. This sort of character, how could he lose to Tang Ruokan in the real world? What a joke! Sure enough, the Heavenly Dragon Tang family couldn't just keep watching anymore. If Li Yunmu had stopped after clearing the 10th level, then with the background of Heavenly Dragon Tang family, they could just barely treat him with indifference. But presently that person had just advanced past the 15th level. What did that mean? It meant that if the Heavenly Dragon Tang family didn't personally appear to refute the rumor, then they would certainly become the center of public criticism. Soon, a representative of the Heavenly Dragon Tang family personally made an announcement on the official forums of Cloud City's Fluxers area, refuting the rumor. It said that the fight between Li Yunmu and their Tang family's Tang Ruokan was a secret betting match, and there wasn't any condition that the results of the battle must be publicly announced. Given that someone was now using this battle as an excuse to smear the name of Heavenly Major General Li Yunmu, they, the Heavenly Dragon Tang family, wanted to make a special declaration Li Yunmu hadn't lost to Tang Ruokan. Heavenly Dragon Tang family would now investigate and make sure that the person who had started the rumor will get the deserved punishment under the law. Forced by the public pressure, the Heavenly Dragon Tang family had to make a public announcement. Regarding this, the public had a profound sensation that due to Li Yunmu's battle strength, the influence of his identity had become terrifying after increasing greatly today. In fact, Li Yunmu really hadn't lost to Tang Ruokan. How could a person who had advanced past the 15th level of Tower of Glory lose to Tang Ruokan? It was a fact that the present Li Yunmu, although only an ordinary crystal fluxer, had already become a major player in the Heavenly Cloud City. Furthermore, all of this had only happened because he had cleared the 15th level. At this instant, there was only one question in everyone's hearts: whether this person will continue to move forward. And if he did decide to move forward, did he have the strength to clear the 20th level? Would he finally become the third person among the newcomers to achieve this feat? Regarding this, many people were looking forward to it, filled with countless hopes. But those fluxers who had higher cultivation didn't think there was any suspense left in this matter. They thought so simply because it was extremely difficult for ordinary crystal fluxers to overcome the hurdle of the 20th level. It was equivalent to achieving something impossible. Man Tian and Hai Yu, the other two newcomers who had charged past the 20th level in one try, were able to do so because of their bloodlines, who were far superior compared to others in this new age. Furthermore, the background of these two formidable newcomers was also extremely remarkable, but what did Li Yunmu have to rely upon? Only the fifth-dimensional treasure bow as well as the extraordinary battle skill, Violent Blade? If that was really all he had, then it wasn't enough. However, ignoring that, it was still a fact that Li Yunmu had cleared the 15th level, which had attracted the attention of many powers and great characters. Given his capabilities, it was no wonder that the War God Temple had presented him with the right to participate in the trial by fire, due to which he could enter the temple. Li Yunmu, I really hadn't misjudged you. Seems like I also need to work hard. At some secret territory in a wilderness in 5th dimension, after receiving the news that Li Yunmu had cleared the 15th level, Ling Shuang raised her head slightly to look towards the sky. Her thin lips curved upwards into a smile. She was the only person apart from the Lord Manager of Cloud Castle who had personally witnessed Li Yunmu entering the battle sage in tranced state. As for the idiot trio of Big Xiang, just forget about them. Those three didn't even know what it meant. In the Heavenly Dragon Tang family's castle, a person was speaking. S.H.A.D.W, this was disastrous. Why is my luck so bad? This guy really advanced past the first 15 levels? This time, the family will certainly create more trouble for me. But Tang Ruokan clenched his fists tightly. His eyes shone brightly with determination. But I'm not that easy to defeat. It had to be said that this Tang Ruokan was really a great warrior who wasn't defeated by difficulties. This person had surprisingly gotten over the soreness in his mental fortitude by himself, and at this moment, an even more powerful presence burst forth from his body. At some great courtyard in the steel castle, a group of people had gathered together. Gloomy expressions covered all of their faces. "Chief, the last time's matter was my fault. I didn't expect that this person's combat potential would be so terrifying. I shouldn't have made that mistake," said a golden crystal fluxer who had a broken arm, feeling ashamed. "Forget about it, this matter wasn't your fault. If this mission had been given to anyone else here, none of us would have expected that an ordinary crystal fluxer would be so formidable either," said the person sitting on a chief's seat after a long silence. Instantly, someone from the group asked, "But what should we do now? Now that the title of Heavenly Major General has been conferred to him, and given his combat strength as well as the strange things Niu Jin told us about, maybe he has some way to confirm that Out Great Courtyard was also involved in those assassinations." "Niu Jin, right, I have no choice but to wrong you. You cannot stay at the Cloud Castle anymore, you must go to the wilderness camp and lay low there until this matter dies down." "No problem, I understand. For this great courtyard, I will now leave the Cloud Castle." It has to be said that Li Yunmu charging past the 15th level had really caused many people to become nervous, including those who had started the rumor to shame him. At this moment, Zhou Jing's eyes were filled with despair as she stared fixedly at the announcement made by Heavenly Dragon Tang family to refute the rumor. "All this happened because of you, effing bitch. If you hadn't incited me, why would have I done this? We're finished. The Heavenly Dragon Tang family will personally hunt us down and we will certainly die. Yes, everything happened because of my greed. I shouldn't have accepted the benefits given by Ho Wu's family. We're done for." Zhou Jing and the other two males had stirred up a hornet's nest this time. However, the Heavenly Dragon Tang family hadn't made their move, when suddenly the door of the room where these three were talking was kicked open. "Zhou Jing, Wang Ji, Chen Qiang? We're from the Central Fluxer Trial Organization. You're all suspected of spreading a rumor aimed to shame Lord Heavenly Major General Li Yunmu. Obediently come with us to the Fluxer Trial Courtyard." The squad of patrollers of Central Continent, who had the average strength of Silver Crystal Layer, suddenly crashed the group's door and came in. They forcefully took away Zhou Jing and the other two whose faces had already turned deathly pale. Fluxers had privileges, but this didn't mean that they could do everything they wanted. Above them, there was still the Fluxer Trial Organization, the institution responsible for collecting misbehaving Fluxers, putting them on trial, and then punishing them. If the rumor started by Zhou Jing and the other two had only shamed a low-level ordinary crystal Fluxer, that would have been fine. This organization wouldn't go as far as to create a fuss and arrest people for such a small matter. But presently, the person they had tried to shame had become the Heavenly Major General of the Central Continent. Furthermore, this person had cleared the 15th level not too long ago, thus this situation had become extremely sensitive. Not only was Zhou Jing and her accomplices arrested, even Ho Wu's family was also arrested at the same time in their small compound in Lucky Wind City. The efficiency with which this matter was dealt with was enough to make anyone's hair stand up from fear. The people of Lucky Wind Great Courtyard were helplessly looking at the three people being taken away. Complicated expressions could be seen on everyone's faces, but no one could deny that Li Yunmu's current status was different from a day ago. Chapter 123, Decked in Gold. At this moment, Li Yunmu, the main character himself, was completely unaware of the many changes happening in the outside world. He didn't even know that his current status was that of one of the 36 Heavenly Major Generals of Central Continent. After advancing past the 15th level, the number of tower badges he obtained began to rise exponentially. After all, starting from the 15th level, the number of golden crystal harpies would increase by 1 each level, and killing each of them would earn him extra 30 tower badges. 15th level, 45 tower badges. 16th level, 76 tower badges. 17th level, 108 tower badges. 18th level, 138 tower badges. 19th level, 169 tower badges. When reaching the 20th level, Li Yunmu, who was leading a group of ravens, cleared the previous level so quickly that he suddenly realized something. If he advanced past the 20th level, then given his speed, the time he had taken to advance through the tower would certainly be less than that of Man Tian or Hai Yu. So he would certainly be ranked above those two newcomers. That's why, if nothing unexpected happened and he was able to clear the 20th level, then his name would certainly enter the ranks of the 100 people whose names were written on the stone outside the tower. But if that happened, he would gain unprecedented glory and fame, and it was something he certainly didn't want. Because presently, he still lacked a sufficiently powerful backer and strength. If he had relied on his own strength and used the 7th-dimensional underworld Raven S.H.A.D.O.W, then reaching the 15th level checkpoint would have certainly been the limit for him and the two shadows. If he entered the list right now, the glory would be completely useless to him. Not only would it have no use for him, instead it may even attract trouble. Thus, Li Yunmu didn't immediately step inside the 20th level. Moreover, that place was a major checkpoint. Even if his brain was in his knees, he would still know that there would certainly be a rainbow crystal harpy great boss waiting for him before it. Li Yunmu quickly considered whether he should take the risk of entering the 20th level or not. System, help me calculate, what's the probability that I can clear the 20th level and what's the probability that I will die? Fortunately, he still had the system by his side. He stopped moving and requested the system to make a detailed deduction. Deduction in progress. After several tens of seconds, the system completed the analysis and spoke up again. If host only depends on his personal combat strength, then the probability of clearing the 20th level is equal to 0 while the chance of perishing is 100%. If the group of underworld ravens is also added to the calculation, then there is a 99% chance that you will clear the 20th level, however the number of the underworld ravens in the group will be greatly reduced. Soon, the information about monsters Li Yunmu will encounter in the 20th level, as deduced by the system, appeared in his mind. Black Crystal Layer Harpies, 99. Golden Crystal Layer Harpies, 5. Rainbow Crystal Layer Harpies, 1. This was the result of the system's analysis regarding the difficulty he would face on the 20th level. Li Yunmu approved of it within his heart. The system's deduction was pretty good indeed. If he didn't have the group of underworld ravens, then just by relying on the combat strength of himself and the two shadows, reaching the 15th level would have been his limit. Because from the 16th level, the number of golden layer harpies increased by 1 in each one, and he couldn't possibly fight even 2 golden layer harpies at the same time. For him and his two shadows, dealing with a golden layer dimensional beast was already the limit. This was the conclusion Li Yunmu had reached without including the Wind God Tornado Kick in the equation. However, Wind God Tornado Kick wasn't effective towards all types of dimensional beasts. For example, the harpies, they possessed the head of a bird and the body of a woman. Furthermore, because of the innate structure of their bodies, they also possessed a pair of bird monster wings. Thus, the Wind God Tornado Kick was completely useless against these types of monsters, because they weren't restricted in the air and could move in it freely. Thus, if Li Yunmu wanted to clear the 20th level, he could only rely upon the group of underworld ravens, who became more and more formidable as they continued to battle. Presently, all the underworld ravens in the group of 51 had temporarily broken through to the silver crystal layer. That's why it wouldn't be much of a problem for these underworld ravens to clear the intense 20th level, which contained 5 golden crystal harpies and 1 rainbow crystal harpy. Alright then, let's go all out on this level. Instantly, Li Yunmu considered all the merits and demerits, and at once, firmly decided to enter the halo. The next instant, he entered the legendary checkpoint of the 20th level. And sure enough, there wasn't much deviation from the system's conclusion. 99 black crystal layer harpies instantly pounced on Li Yunmu. In a moment, he was bombarded by wind blades, fireballs, mental attacks, and other abilities which the harpies could use. However, Li Yunmu with his 2 shadows didn't put these 99 black crystal layer harpies in his eyes. All the underworld ravens attacked the 5 golden layer harpies and this rainbow crystal harpy without holding back. Li Yunmu immediately issued his final command to all the underworld ravens. The 51 silver crystal layer underworld ravens immediately divided into 6 squads. Each one rushed towards the 6 different boss level harpies. As for the 99 black crystal layer ordinary harpies, Li Yun and Li Feng had already reached them and went on a killing spree among them. Due to little Li Ying swallowing all the mental attacks of the harpies, such tricks were completely ineffective. After a long while, all the black crystal layer harpies were completely annihilated by Li Feng and Li Yun. Once the opponent's ability to affect the consciousness lost its effect, they were even unable to break the Shadow's defenses. As for the next battle, it was completely unrelated to Li Yunmu. 51 silver crystal underworld ravens vs 5 harpy witches and 1 harpy empress. According to logic, the 51 silver crystal underworld ravens would certainly lose here. However, they were creatures that became more powerful as they battled more. After absorbing the vitality and blood of their fallen comrades, their strength would continue to increase. Soon, the number of the silver crystal underworld ravens began to fall rapidly, as they were massacred by the boss-level harpies. But with the death of each underworld raven, the strength of the still alive ones increased. 51, 47, 39, 26, 19, 12 Finally, only 12 underworld ravens were still alive from the group of 51. Li Yunmu discovered to his astonishment that each of the survivors received an increase in its cultivation base. Instantly, all 12 of them were upgraded to 4th layer and became golden crystal layer underworld ravens. Instantly, the 5 golden crystal harpy witches who had suffered many injuries were annihilated by the surviving birds whose strength had increased rapidly. The 12 golden crystal underworld ravens finally surrounded and attacked the rainbow crystal harpy empress. However, this battle didn't last for long. By the time all of the harpies on the 20th level were killed, dropping their tower badges, only 6 golden crystal underworld ravens remained. When they fed on the dead corpses of the harpies, although their strength didn't increase, but all the injuries they had suffered during the battle were healed. Their blood was replenished and they once again reached their peak condition. 6 golden crystal layer underworld ravens are more than sufficient. Li Yunmu fiercely clenched his fists. Great, the results of the battle were far more ideal compared to what he had expected. He still had the capital to continue forward with confidence. In this level alone, Li Yunmu had earned 270 tower badges. The final rainbow crystal layer harpy empress had dropped 100 tower badges by herself. Do tower badges drop so easily? No, they don't. The main reason is because the strength of a rainbow crystal dimensional beast has almost reached the pinnacle of power. Furthermore, if Li Yunmu's cultivation base wasn't at an ordinary crystal layer, that this boss certainly wouldn't have had a drop rate of 100%. So basically, if someone with even slightly higher cultivation base would have charged through the tower, then they would not have earned so much. Thus, within the Tower of Glory, the lower the cultivation base of a fluxer who challenged it, the greater was the opportunity for him to earn rewards. Although the Flux ancestor harbored evil intentions, but he also left a great opportunity for the newcomers who had great strength. Like Li Yunmu. Even if he stopped moving forward right here, he had already accumulated sufficient tower badges to exchange for dimensional treasure tools and many other resources which were even more terrifying than the equipment he already possessed. Next, Li Yunmu counted the number of tower badges he had accumulated in total. Altogether, he had earned 800 something. My god, so many tower badges? Li Yunmu was completely astonished. With this amount, how many higher dimensional treasure weapons could he obtain? What a fortune this was! Chapter 124, The Broken Wings of a Wind Child. If Li Yunmu hadn't checked, he wouldn't have known. But once he really saw the 873 tower badges inside his storage badge, an unexplainable sensation gripped his entire being. What sort of sensation was that? It was as if a poor person had suddenly won a lottery of $100 million, and a false sensation of security was born within him. It wasn't a good sensation, and Li Yunmu stopped advancing forward. He instantly went to exchange the badges for rewards. Heavens only knew when the Flux ancestor would awaken. He should be careful just in case. What if the old man was suddenly roused because of some abnormality and came to take a look? Just thinking about it made Li Yunmu feel uncomfortable from head to toe. Because of this, he decided to use up all his badges before doing anything else. What was this tower currency? It was just fictitious money created by the Flux ancestor. If one didn't exchange them for real objects, they were worth nothing. The next instant, Li Yunmu once again entered the Tower of Glory's exchange region. His first priority was to obtain the Ancient Freezing Rune. Ordinary Crystal Layer's Ancient Freezing Rune, 10 Tower Badges. Black Crystal Layer, 20. Silver Crystal Layer, 30. Golden Crystal Layer, 40. Rainbow Crystal Layer, 50. Without any hesitation, Li Yunmu fished out 50 tower badges and placed them on the left side of the balance scale. Instantly, they were converted to a pinnacle grade freezing rune. After that, he exchanged 50 tower badges for a pinnacle grade thunder rune. 100 tower badges were spent, but Li Yunmu still had 773 remaining. But when he looked at the large amount of rewards he could choose, his mind suddenly stopped working. All those tower badges he still had, what should he exchange them for? Flux cultivation battle skills? No, not a chance. He had the system, so which flux energy battle skill didn't he have? Moreover, if he wanted to cultivate them, they would also have to be repaired by the system. It wasn't worth it, so he was better off spending his badges on material rewards. System, what should I exchange for? Li Yunmu discovered that the greatest item in the Tower of Glory was surprisingly a bottle of blood, named Deity Clan's Blood. It was priced at 3,000 tower badges. According to rumor, it was a higher dimensional heavenly medicinal supplement. If one drank this bottle of deity blood, there was a 50% chance they would obtain the bloodline of the deity clan. When Li Yunmu saw this item, he became extremely excited. However, he realized that the few tower badges he possessed were not enough to exchange for the first-ranked item in Tower of Glory. Due to this, he could only bury the wish to obtain it in his heart and start looking for something else. He carefully looked through all the extraordinary treasures between the price range of 500 to 700 tower badges. However, his knowledge regarding items was lacking, so he could only request the system's help. After making a comprehensive analysis of host's present situation, the system suggests that you should first exchange for the broken wings of a wind child. The system didn't let Li Yunmu down. After being silent for several seconds, it did a comprehensive analysis of his current abilities and weapons and provided the most optimal suggestion to him. The broken wings of a wind child? What are they? Li Yunmu was startled for a moment. He had never expected that the system would give such a reply. He quickly searched through the tower steel, and after a long while, he finally found this item. The broken wings of a wind child. Wind children are a race that used to exist in the true sixth dimension. They are a rarely seen ancient race who has lost its home. They possess a trace of wind god's bloodline. They are innately proficient in using the power of storms. They are a comparatively mild-natured and peaceful race. They live secretly in the deepest hidden domains of the true fifth dimension. Finding their tracks is extremely difficult. According to rumors, they are almost extinct. When Li Yunmu read this information about the broken wings of a wind child, he was momentarily stunned. Simply put, wind children were the descendants of the true sixth dimension's ancient god who was at the transcendent layer and possessed its own bloodline. The item in the exchange was a pair of wings from the body of a wind child, which were also known as the wings of the wind. This item didn't amplify strength. It had only one use, and it was for a fluxer to blend them with his flux armor so they could be used as part of their body to fly into the horizon. How could have Li Yunmu expected that the first suggestion given by the system would surprisingly allow him to spend a lot of tower badges, to exchange for the wings of the wind? Although this was an exceedingly good price for them, wasn't it still extremely expensive? System, these wings require 500 tower badges, are you sure that they're the best available choice? Li Yunmu asked, finding it hard to believe. Yes, after doing a comprehensive analysis of host's present situation, the system found that there isn't any item more suitable to the host compared to this one. However, even fluxers can accomplish flying by controlling the air after their cultivation reaches transcendence layer. Even ordinary people can put on exoskeleton wingsuits to fly. Li Yunmu's heart ached. What was this, spending 500 tower badges to exchange for just a pair of wings? However, the flying achieved by fluxers at transcendent layer can't be compared to using the wings of the wind. The flying speed, flexibility, as well the application of wind power's true essence is far superior with this item in comparison to controlling air to fly. As long as the host obtains these wings of the wind and merges them with the crystal armor, then let alone transcendent layer fluxers, even ordinary sages who aren't good at flying wouldn't be able to pose a threat, the system calmly replied. As for the exoskeleton wing armor, which was being researched by humanity, it was completely ignored by the system. Clearly, in the system's eyes, this whatever researched wing armor wasn't even worth mentioning in the same sentence as wings of the wind. So powerful! This time Li Yunmu couldn't remain unperturbed. No wonder the price of this transcendent layer item had been set to 500 tower badges by the Flux ancestor. Instantly, Li Yunmu didn't hesitate anymore and spent the required price to obtain the wings of the wind. Right after that, the originally bright line with the item's name on the steel turned grey. Li Yunmu quickly realized that the system's suggestion had been a wise one. The Wind Children, who were descendants of the rumored wing god, were apparently extremely difficult to track. And then you still had to kill them, while the blood of a transcendent layer god ran through their veins. Once Li Yunmu obtained the pair of wings, he successively exchanged for 3 other items following the system's suggestions. The first one was an elixir that contained a merging of dark flux energies. Fluxers had spent a great amount of time and effort to create this type of elixir, which was made from blending 16 types of legendary herbs together. Its usage was simple, there was only one, really, and it was to combine all the types of dark flux energy to form a completely different type of energy which had an even more formidable destruction power. This elixir's exchange price was only 15 tower badges. Cheap? Compared to the wings of the wind, it was certainly a small price to pay, but that was only for someone like Li Yunmu. Normally, a silver crystal fluxer would only earn 15 tower badges even after advancing past the first 10 levels. The second item was a beetle's egg. The size of this insect egg was nearly equal to a normal car, and the creature it came from was known as heavy pincer gigantic beetle. It was extremely savage and possessed a formidable defense as well as an enormous strength without any clear weaknesses. But the most significant characteristic of this creature was that it could dig through earth extremely quickly. Li Yunmu didn't know why the system had asked him to get this huge egg, but he didn't think too much about it and spent 15 tower badges to obtain the item. Chapter 125, The End of the Tower Challenge. The heavy pincer gigantic beetle's egg clearly didn't belong to a young insect but rather an imago monster who had entered a contract with a fluxer that used secondary flux energy. The insect then had been sealed to be sold as a familiar or a mount. The eggs made of secondary flux energy in which familiars were sealed were still extremely rare to Li Yunmu, he had only read about them in the library. In the heavenly cloud castle, he hadn't encountered even a single sealed egg until now. After all, the number fluxers who had the secondary type of flux energy and possessed the ability to summon dimensional beasts was extremely low. And among them, those with superior strength who could actually undertake the task of sealing familiars, including manufacturing special items to seal them in so that they can be sold, were even scarcer. The third item Li Yunmu chose was a chunk of pitch-black wood. This item was around the size of a brick and it was known as reincarnation wood, an extremely strange name. Li Yunmu had to use his final 200 tower badges to exchange for it. When he looked at its information though, he was left in shock. It had only one ability, and it was to substitute its owner upon their death. This piece of wood came from an extremely rare Trient-dimensional monster which grew in 7th dimension. As its name implied, it was used to save the owner's life. As long as a Fluxer refined the wood with their blood essence, the reincarnation tree could be used to resist anything. The only limit was the sage layer, anything below that could be blocked by this item. Although Li Yunmu spent 200 tower badges for this wood, but this was a life-saving treasure. He didn't hesitate one bit when exchanging for it. Sure enough, as soon as he obtained the piece of reincarnation tree, its name on the exchange list on the steel immediately turned dark. After all, it was extremely rare. It has to be said that the 4 items suggested by the system after its analysis weren't simple. They were extremely scarce in supply, only ones that could be encountered just once in 100 years. Although they didn't increase Li Yunmu's strength directly, but as the system had told him, his present combat strength was enough to take down higher layer Fluxers already. It was currently sufficient for him, and what he really needed were the life-saving and mobility treasures. Wings of the Wind were one of such items. After a Fluxer refined them, their flying speed would directly surpass the speed of those in the transcendent layer who flew by controlling the air. In fact, it could even give competition to some sage layer experts. As for the other 3 items, all of them were rarely seen and difficult to find items. This Tower of Glory was indeed an enormous treasure house. From this alone it could be seen that the influence and reserves of the Fluxer Association and the Flux Ancestor were extremely enormous. After Li Yunmu received his 4 items, of the 800-something tower badges he initially had in his possession, most of them were used up. He was left with only 7 tower badges. However, it didn't matter. The only use for the tower badges was just to increase Li Yunmu's emergency strength. Presently, he had not only obtained enough for freezing and thunder runes, which were his reason for coming here, but had even harvested far more profit than he had anticipated. Due to this, he was relatively satisfied with his trip here. System, is there any way to conceal my name from the rankings of the Tower of Glory? The tower badges Li Yunmu had obtained after advancing past the first 20 layers had been completely used up. That's why he was somewhat uncertain about what he should do next. Should he continue to advance through the tower or not? After all, once he entered the 21st level, then his name would certainly appear on the Tower of Glory's ranking, given his performance. But if he didn't go and watched helplessly as the enormous amount of tower badges slipped out of his hand, he simply wouldn't be able to forgive himself. Yes, if host doesn't want his name to appear in the top 100 ranking written on the tower steel, then you only need to walk to the tower steel and use your consciousness to directly erase it. Accomplishing this is simple. The Tower of Glory's tower steel itself has this secret function. What? The tower steel also has this type of function. When Li Yunmu heard this, all of his confusion instantly disappeared. After all, not having a powerful background was sure tragic, he had to carefully consider before taking each step. Li Yunmu followed the system's words and immediately went to the halo and touched the tower steel of the 20th level. Then, with just a thought, the ranking on top of the tower steel changed exactly how the system had told him it would earlier. The ranking that was comprised of the top 100 people of Tower of Glory appeared for him to see, and, as he had guessed previously, his name was now at the 99th position. Immediately, Desolate Continent's Man Tian slipped to the 100th position and North Sea Continent's Hai Yu was squeezed out of the name list altogether. Fortunately, the system had analyzed this Tower of Glory long ago. If Li Yunmu hadn't asked for the system's advice before leaving the 20th level, then regardless of whether he chose to move to the next level or leave this tower, then this ranking list on the tower steel would have instantly replaced the old one outside. Not saying anything, Li Yunmu immediately wished for his name to be removed. The next instant, his name disappeared from the tower stele as expected. Man Tian once again ascended to 99th rank and Hai Yu re-entered the ranking list. Is it done? Yes. That's better. Since I don't need to worry about this anymore, then let's proceed. System, please analyze the 21st level, what are my chances of clearing it? Analysis already complete. On the 21st level, you will encounter 100 silver crystal monsters and 9 golden layer monsters. Host's chances of passing through are 100%. 100%? Okay, then we will go. Li Yunmu didn't hesitate anymore. With just a thought, he was transferred to the 21st level. Sure enough, the system's analysis wasn't the least bit wrong. The level of difficulty here rose exponentially, for even the lowest leveled monster was at the silver crystal layer. Furthermore, there were also 9 golden layer ones. Although the number of monsters and their cultivation was enough to give nightmares to other Fluxers, but they didn't count for much in front of the 6 golden crystal underworld ravens. After 10 minutes, nothing unexpected had happened at the 21st level. The system had predicted that Li Yunmu had a 100% chance of successfully clearing this place, and so naturally there weren't any problems. However, during this fight, 4 of the 6 golden crystal layer underworld ravens fell, leaving only 2 alive. When this happened and the 2 still alive absorbed the vitality and blood of their fallen comrades, they finally made another breakthrough. For the first time, Li Yunmu had 2 rainbow crystal underworld ravens at his command. Using these 2 underworld ravens who had made a temporary breakthrough and whose strength had increased greatly, Li Yunmu got rid of the 6 armed devil apes in one swoop. On this level, Li Yunmu harvested 291 tower badges. Yes, that is right. After clearing the 20th level checkpoint, the earnings of each next level would instantly swell. However, at the same time, the difficulty of each level would also continue to become increasingly more terrifying. When reaching the 22nd floor, the system pegged Li Yunmu's chances of successfully clearing it at 90%. He pondered it for a brief moment and then decided to still do it, risking everything. Abundance for the bold, famine for the timid. If he didn't dare to go to the next level even with the 90% chance of being successful, then what was the use of cultivating? He should just return home and start farming. On this floor, the fight was extremely intense. After more than half an hour, Li Yunmu finally got rid of all monsters, but out of the 2 rainbow crystal layer underworld ravens, 1 had fallen in the battle. This also crushed the hope of any further advancement for Li Yunmu. As expected, his chances of survival at the 23rd floor instantly dropped by a great margin. The system's analysis revealed that he had only 50% chance of surviving if he went there. Almost hopeless. In an instant, Li Yunmu decided to conclude his trip to the Tower of Glory here. He collected the 592 tower badges on this floor. At the moment, the total number of tower badges he had accumulated was 890 badges. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if there weren't anyone else who had challenged the tower while keeping their identity concealed, then the number of tower badges earned by Li Yunmu would be the highest. Even Man Tian and Hai Yu, these 2 people at the same cultivation layer as him, lacked the 800-something tower badges earned by him at the 21st and 22nd floors. This time, the system didn't talk nonsense and directly suggested Li Yunmu to exchange for a certain item. It priced at 888 tower badges and it was a sage level item. Chapter 126, Fallen. Hey, did you hear? Li Yunmu seems to have died inside. H.A.C.K, this can't be true? Just 2 days ago this genius was conferred the title of one of the 36 heavenly major generals. How could he have dared to die? Who knows? Every year, there aren't just 1 or 2 formidable newcomers who die within the Tower of Glory. This has been happening for a long time, so it's not that strange. In any case, the people at the official forum of Cloud City Warzone are going crazy. According to rumors, after he cleared the 15th level, There haven't been any news about him. Other than dying inside, what else could have happened? Alas, such a formidable genius, the new star of our heavenly cloud city, how could he have died so easily? Many people sighed inwardly. In the 2 days, many things had happened. But presently, among the fluxers of the heavenly cloud city, the matter being discussed the most was the supreme glory earned by the newcomer genius Li Yunmu a few days ago and the news of him falling in the tower. Although this Li Yunmu had some strength, he had overestimated himself. Could it be that his sect didn't inform him that within the Tower of Glory, those who lose themselves to greed are certain to die? At this moment, within the heavenly cloud city's Fluxer Association, one youth wearing luxurious clothes, spoke up with a sneer. "Oh right, Elder Sis, now that this guy died inside the tower, my mission should also be cancelled. You do know that my time is extremely precious, I don't have enough of it to waste here waiting for someone who had merely cleared the 15th level of the tower. Haha, I don't know why we have to place so much importance on him, given our status. Qing Yang, you still haven't learned to be patient. Since our father solemnly entrusted us with this task, we have to accomplish it. If this Li Yunmi really wasn't worth it, then why would our father have called me back?" A female wearing red clothes remained completely unmoved. She kept waiting patiently, elegantly standing in the wind like the most beautiful flower at sunset. Behind her there was an orderly group of battle soldiers wearing cyan blue military uniforms. On top of their uniforms there was an insignia of a green cloud on which 2 words, "Green Cloud," were engraved. Each of the soldiers had a serious expression on his face, and all of them had a suppressed aura of fierceness around them. The expression of ruthlessness was quite apparent in all of their eyes. As long as any educated person saw them, they would quickly recognize who they were. These were the soldiers of the heavenly cloud city. Furthermore, the green cloud insignia on their uniforms belonged to the biggest trump card of heavenly cloud city troops known as Green Cloud Regiment. In this squad, the cultivation of golden crystal was the lowest. From this alone it could be understood how extremely formidable were these people. Within heavenly cloud city, only those who had great ability and influence would use golden crystal fluxers to form a guarding squad. Thus, it wasn't very difficult to recognize the 2, less than 20-year-old people. One of whom was male and the other female. The male one was Heavenly Cloud City's City Lord's son, Lin Qingyang, who had the first position on the list of Cloud City Warzone's top 10 most powerful. The female, on the other hand, was even more famous, for she was the goddess of Heavenly Cloud City Lin Yuero. She was also the stepsister of Lin Qingyang. The arrival of the 2 people instantly attracted attention of the people inside the Fluxer Association. According to rumors, Lin Yuero hadn't appeared in public for close to 2 years now. From the time she had entered the Blue Cloud sect, it was extremely rare for even the people of the city to catch a glimpse of her. That's why no one had expected that today these 2 siblings would come here together. Is Lin Yuero waiting for that Li Yunmu who had created so much buzz 2 days ago? But there has been no news about him for the past 2 days, does our city lord still believe that he's alive? That should be the case. However, I'm quite confused, even though this Li Yunmu's combat strength is quite formidable, but when all is said and done, he's just a single person. Whether he will be able to continue growing at this pace is still unknown. Logically, given his status, why would our city lord have Lin Yuero come meet him personally? He, this is where you are wrong, my friend. Just Li Yunmu alone would naturally be unable to make our heavenly cloud city's goddess come personally to receive him, but behind him stands the mysterious section. This senior's words are quite correct. Presently, this Li Yunmu is the only person from that hidden Li sect who has appeared publicly. According to my reliable sources, these days, many powerful families and clans had tried to contact Li Yun and Li Feng, but there were no replies from them, so only this Li Yunmu can be reached. That's right, during the past 2 days, I went to the dimensional battlefield hoping to see Li Yun and Li Feng's fights, but they didn't come. Their roots should be within our heavenly cloud city's command, but they're not showing themselves. A group of heavenly cloud cities fluxers were starting to discuss the secretive Li sect once again. Right then, Lin Yuero herself had come as her father's representative, so now many people once more began to question whether this mysterious Li sect truly existed. Other than a mysterious sect with great reserves, who else could suddenly produce 3 newcomer geniuses? Moreover, Li Yunmu, who only had a cultivation of ordinary crystal layer, had advanced past the 15th level of Tower of Glory, which was no joke. Everyone kept discussing this matter, but they stopped the moment they saw Lin Yueruo suddenly walking over to a fluxer whose entire body was covered in flux armor. When the crowd took a better look at that person, they cursed inwardly. That was ordinary crystal flux armor. This was just too dazzling. When an ordinary crystal fluxer walked out of the passageway connecting to the Fluxer Association's heavenly world, there was only one name in the onlookers' hearts: Li Yunmu. They didn't know who exactly it was, but who else could it be? This ordinary crystal fluxer was certainly Li Yunmu, who had challenged the tower 2 days ago. Surprisingly, he hadn't died inside and had come out alive. This was some big news. Before long, the news of Li Yunmu coming out of the tower after 2 days immediately spread through all the areas under the control of Heavenly Cloud City. Furthermore, the word of him being personally received by the goddess of Heavenly Cloud City, Lin Yueruo, also spread like wildfire. Instantly, everyone was knowledgeable about it. Those who were unaware of true facts sighed continuously at the influence of renown earned at the Tower of Glory. But the truly powerful clans understood what was happening behind the scenes. Heavenly Cloud City's city lord wanted to rope in the mysterious and powerful sect standing behind Li Yunmu. He even dispatched his treasured daughter to make the first move. Quite ambitious. Lin Yueruo. For a moment, countless people kept repeating this name. Its background wasn't simple, for she was the most beloved of Heavenly Cloud City's city lord, the goddess of countless people, and the disciple of Blue Cloud Sect's master. She was even related to the Chu family of Hidden Rain City, as well as being a 20-year-old transcendence layer expert herself. None of the previously mentioned epithets were easy to come by, but all of them had been acquired by this one woman, Lin Yueruo. Heavenly Cloud City's city lord had deliberately called her back from the Blue Cloud sect and entrusted her with the task of personally receiving Li Yunmu. What did this signify then? Many people couldn't help but start pondering. They all had to accept that the tangled web of power, which was like a mass of undercurrents hidden beneath the waves, was extremely complicated. Regardless of that, everyone was now clear on the fact that Li Yunmu hadn't perished. He was still alive and had come out of the Tower of Glory after successfully clearing the 15th level. As for why he had stayed within the tower for 2 days? It might have been because he needed to recuperate from some serious injury he had received at one of the levels. Or it might have been to make use of the large amount of tower badges he had obtained. Whatever it was, this matter wasn't anyone's concern. Everyone was by then focused on another thing. Since Li Yunmu had successfully come out alive from the Tower of Glory, then from this day onwards, Heavenly Cloud City was on the verge of gaining another formidable genius who had risen from out of nowhere. If one was to think about it, with the amount of tower badges he had to have obtained after clearing the first 15 levels, his strength must have increased greatly. So exactly what kind of treasure weapon had he obtained within the Tower of Glory in the end? Was another sage-level item about to appear in the world? Many people and many powerful organizations, who had complicated relationships between themselves, agreed on one thing: to keep watch outside the residence of Heavenly Cloud City's city lord. Chapter 127, What does the city's situation have to do with me? Li Yunmu, the person who spouted half-truths that day, was indeed you. Good people don't live long, whereas scoundrels live 1,000 years. Well, this time I finally caught you red-handed, didn't I? As soon as Li Yunmu entered the city lord's residence, he wasn't able to remain calm. What is power and glory? What is the age of flux energy being paramount? What is extreme polarization? The outskirts of Lucky Wind City, a small city situated at the coast of a sea, were haunted by bitter cold. This place was occupied by more than 100,000 slum dwellers who had to face the dilemma of life and death every day. Day by day, they struggled to survive, numb and apathetic. Every day, they put their body through hell, not knowing if they would last till the end of the day. They had no warm home, no secure environment, nor any guarantee of being able to eat a full meal. But what about the official residents of Heavenly Cloud City's city lord who had control over 136 cities? The atmosphere, the splendor, as well as the pavilions and gardens, which Li Yunmu had yet to finishing passing even after he'd walked for more than 10 minutes, were unending. Truthfully, he was no saint, but the grandness of City Lord's mansion appalled him. This region represented the administrative core of more than 100 small cities, similarly to how a king's castle represented the lands that its owner ruled. That's right, in the new era of flux energy, the city lord of a secondary grade city was no different from the kings and queens of the secular world. At this moment though, Li Yunmu was troubled by another thing he hadn't expected to be so out of luck. Even though he had managed to enter the mansion with great difficulty, but even before he could see the city lord with his own eyes, he ran into someone whom he didn't have any great desire to see. It was none other than Chu Qingyu. It was not that Li Yunmu disliked this stubborn lass, but she was just too much of a headache. She was too vengeful. Back when he'd just started, he once oppressed her on the dimensional battlefield. They hadn't ever come face to face in the real world, but she still put him deep into her memory. Of course, if it was just her alone, he wouldn't have felt much of a headache. The real problem resided in the maid behind her, Lin Li. He felt quite embarrassed at this moment. For the sake of courtesy, he'd already removed the crystal armor. Li Yunmu didn't know why Lin Li would become Chu Qingyu's maid, but the latter's explosive progress eventually answered his question. In the beginning, this girl was just like him, a newcomer fluxer who hadn't opened even a single flux point. However, at present, she was already a fluxer who had condensed silver crystal armor. A month. In merely a month, Chu Qingyu had rushed to the threshold of golden crystal fluxer. What kind of speed was this? However, since she had currently appeared in the mansion of the city lord, Li Yunmu eventually understood. This girl was indeed a person with deep background. Even so, Lu Yunmu couldn't help himself and asked, "What's your innate talent?" "Hehe, naturally the pinnacle grade innate talent." "Jealous? We'll battle again now. I'll surely beat you until you start weeping and call for your mother and father." Chu Qingyu chuckled giddily, feeling extremely complacent inside. She was naturally aware of Li Yunmu's lower mid-grade innate talent. Otherwise, if not for the lack of innate talent, he would have certainly been an incomparably dazzling character, given his battle prowess. Pinnacle grade inwardly, Li Yunmu couldn't help but shake his head. Fortunately, it wasn't exceptional grade, only pinnacle. She was indeed blessed by heavens. With sufficient resources, such a fast improvement was no surprise. Having good innate talent makes things easy. As for why, it's simply because they need to absorb less flux crystal to advance. This is a very simple thing. Broadly speaking, flux cultivation is just opening and filling all the flux points in one's body. Generally it is divided into two parts, the first is opening a flux point and the second is filling it up. The flux points of people with good innate talent were naturally loosely closed, therefore they didn't require many resources to fully open them. On the other hand, the flux points of people with bad innate talents were completely blocked. Due to this, they then required a lot more resources to completely open them. The filling of flux points followed the same logic as well. When people with good innate talent absorbed a flux crystal, the percentage of energy which transformed into their own was much higher. For example, the amount of flux energy absorbed by people who had high innate talent was around 70% 80%. If one had low innate talent though, then they would only absorb about 20% 30%, thus naturally requiring a pile of flux crystals. As a result, a person with both high aptitude as well as background and resources would find advancing only too easy. At least before reaching Flux Master, one could advance extremely quick. This was the reason why the number of cultivators on Earth who had reached Flux Master layer was extremely low when compared to those who had become Flux Disciple. After reaching Flux Master rank, cultivation was no longer just a simple matter of using resources to advance. You two know each other. Lin Yuero was smiling while watching the two youths. Things seemed to be going quite smooth between them. Little Yu seemed quite familiar with this Li Yunmu. Chu Qingyu turned around and furiously said, "Humph, no we don't. Who could have thought that this person would rise even higher?" The main reason for her anger was that she had believed that she would be the one to shine within Heavenly Cloud City. She had imagined that she would quickly advance through the first 20 levels of Tower of Glory with her silver crystal layer cultivation and shock everyone. However, what had happened was that this person with his trifling cultivation base of ordinary crystal layer had simply advanced past the 15th level and instantly stolen all the glory that should have rightfully belonged to her. Chu Qingyu bitterly hated this conceited person. So naturally, after encountering him, she was intent on destroying him completely. Haha, indeed we don't know each other. Li Yunmu laughed and didn't explain any further. His gaze fell on Lin Li at that moment, but she was just looking at the ground. Until now, Li Yunmu still hadn't greeted her. This was mainly because he didn't want to destroy the life she had chosen for herself. If she, a half-awakened Fluxer, was targeted because of her relation to him, she wouldn't be able to endure the hardships. Li Yunmu just sighed regretfully in his heart. His words from that time were quite correct. After the day of Dragon's Leap, both of them were indeed people of different worlds. Although the directions their lives had moved in were different from what they had expected, but the result was still the same. The two of them couldn't return to their starting point. I wonder why did City Lord specially invite me to come over? After their group sat down and the maid served tea with refreshments, Li Yunmu asked the main question. I'm, after all, just a trifling ordinary crystal fluxer, so I really didn't expect that I would catch the discerning eye of the City Lord. At this moment, Li Yunmu was no longer the inexperienced and easily frightened youth like earlier. He didn't have the slightest fear regarding City Lord's position, for he had the system and the heavenly world. Furthermore, now he also had a sage level tool in his profound reserves. The confidence then naturally stemmed from his heart. When a person possesses sufficient foundation to have confidence in himself, the people and positions which he previously looked up to gradually lose their power. The person thus becomes indifferent, unafraid, unperturbed, and assured of their own standing. For example, before, Li Yunmu considered the City Lord to be high up there and looked up at him with respect and admiration. Now, however, he didn't much care about that person. Lin Yuero secretly sized up Li Yunmu. His confidence and calmness made her come to the conclusion that he certainly wasn't as simple as it was stated in the investigation report. If he really was just an extremely ordinary person from a small city on the seashore, as was written in the report, then how could he remain so confident in this place? I don't know, Heavenly General Li. What do you think of our Heavenly Cloud City's current situation though? Lin Yuero softly asked, after a while. Heavenly Cloud City's situation? I'm a mere ordinary crystal fluxer, much too insignificant in front of the enormous powers deciding its fate. Li Yunmu had never expected that this woman known as the goddess of Heavenly Cloud City would find him to talk about Heavenly Cloud City's situation. He didn't give a damn about these matters. Moreover, whatever had happened in the Heavenly Cloud City had no relation to him. But that wasn't important, the real question was why had the other party just called him Heavenly General Li? When referring to the Heavenly General, you mean me? Li Yunmu asked with hesitation. Chapter 128, Purpose. At this time, Lin Qingyang, who had been sitting on the side, unable to take part in conversation, finally grabbed his chance and spoke in an irritated voice. Hey? Don't tell me that you still aren't aware that you've been conferred the title of Heavenly Battle General by H.A.C.K? And about the glorious declaration made by Fluxor Association on all continents when you cleared the 15th level. The young man had been annoyed with Li Yunmu for quite some time now. The reason for it was really quite simple. Li Yun had swept through the top 10 most powerful list and didn't put him, the first-ranked person on the list, in his eyes, so Lin Qingyang had sufficient reason to be angry. If it wasn't for the task entrusted to him by his father, given his identity and status, why would he act so calmly and mannerly after seeing him? Lin Qingyang. Lin Yuero felt an oncoming headache. Her little brother was excessively wild and arrogant. Although when they were in front of their father he acted with caution and conscientiousness, she understood in her heart what kind of person was Lin Qingyang when he was away. This time, father had especially dispatched him, hoping that he could establish friendly relations with Li Yunmu, but father didn't know what kind of a mistake he'd done. Furthermore, Lin Yuero felt that her little brother's behavior right then was quite strange. Logically, even if Li Yunmu's senior apprentice brother had swept through the top 10 most powerful, Lin Qinjian should act according to the situation. Normally at least, he wouldn't ruin a matter of great importance for his father with his unruly behavior. Both of them knew that this time the task entrusted to them was quite important. This Li Yunmu was the key to contacting the mysterious Li sect. Lin Yuero didn't believe that Lin Qingyang didn't realize the importance of this matter. But then why was he showing so much hostility towards Li Yunmu, even though this was their first meeting? For a second, Lin Yuero seemed to have recalled a matter from the past, and without her realizing it a strange expression appeared on her face. However, Li Yunmu clearly wasn't fazed by the attitude of the proud son of heavens. He had seen the bearing of many such people by now. The descendants of a famous character could normally be classified into two extreme cases based on their behavior. The example of first type was Lin Yuero. Those belonging to this category usually always acted seriously and could be considered to become the backbone of their clans in the future. The other type comprised of people like Lin Qingyang who could be considered as dregs or hindrance, the irresponsible children of the clan who embarrassed their fathers and clans. This day, Li Yunmu saw with his own eyes what kind of character and what level of haughtiness was possessed by Heavenly Cloud City Lord's son. He controlled his desire to scowl and smiled in response, without saying anything. Although Li Yunmu didn't know when H.A.C.K City had conferred the title of some heavenly general to him, but at this moment, he became aware that the city lord had some request to ask from him and not the other way around. I'm sorry for making you feel embarrassed, this brat Lin Qingyang is somewhat arrogant and willful. I apologize to you on his behalf. You've just come out of the Tower of Glory, so it's natural that you aren't aware of the events that took place in the past 2 days. Following this, Lin Yuero quickly narrated all the events related to Li Yunmu that he might have missed. When Li Yunmu heard it, he couldn't calm down for a long time. So the Tower of Glory had made glorious announcements to the whole continent when he had cleared the 10th and 15th levels? Immediately, Li Yunmu's gloominess turned to delight. Fortunately, he had erased his name from the tower stele before leaving the 20th level, otherwise it would have caused even more commotion in the outside world. At this time, he finally realized that his status wasn't limited to only being one of the 36 heavenly generals under H.A.C.K City. He had also been bestowed the Azure Dragon Mansion and obtained the entry ticket to War God Temple. What kind of joke was this? Immediately, Li Yunmu felt that this matter had gone out of control. Moreover, these weren't even the most important things. The genuinely significant one was that Lin Yuero hadn't come to find him because of some nonsensical heavenly general title, rather she had rushed to find him with an intention of contacting the illusory Li sect standing behind him. Swiftly Li Yunmu became clear about the general situation. He looked around the majestic hall of the city lord's mansion and instantly realized everything. No wonder this time all major powers of Heavenly Cloud City had sent their youngest generations to represent them. According to the introductions given by Lin Yuero, there were 4 people from the Heavenly Cloud City's 10 great citadels in this group surrounding him. Hidden Rain City's Chu family's Chu Qingyu was just one of these representatives. Furthermore, there was also the Tang family from Heavenly Dragon City, though the one who had come here wasn't Tang Ruokan but rather his elder brother Tang Baichen. Regarding this man, Li Yunmu had heard about him long ago, from the old man to whom he had sold the dwarf witch's equipment. Tang Baichen was the first in line among the third generation of Heavenly Dragon Tang family and was more formidable than Tang Ruokan. His cultivation base had already reached half-step rainbow crystal. People like him could be considered as the real top 10 most formidable in the fifth dimension. However, their names weren't revealed to the public. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his level of people could be considered as truly formidable opponents. If Li Yunmu didn't use the underworld Raven Bow and relied only on his personal strength, even including the two shadows in the equation, then it would still be difficult to say with certainty if he could prevail over the enemy. The third major power in the gathering was the Flying Jade City's Bird Pavilion. Although they weren't a clan, but they occupied the highest position in the Flying Jade City. It was rumored that all the city masters there were disciples of this Bird Pavilion. The person they had sent over was a female wearing black clothes and a sword on her back. She looked 16 or maybe 17, so there wasn't much of a difference between her and Li Yunmu's age. Surprisingly, her temperament somewhat resembled that of Ling Shuang. She was quiet, cold, and somewhat narcissistic. Her name was Han Qingyu and she was a person who used sword as her main weapon. The final major power was Mo Chen City's Mo clan. The person they had sent here was a youth with large stature, his both big hands filled with calluses. It was clear from one look that he was an expert trained in using fist skills. He emitted a quite domineering air and his name was Mo Kangsheng I, an extremely tyrannical name. However, Li Yunmu sensed that the people around him were even more frightened of him compared to Tang Ruokan. Instantly, he felt a sensation of shocking regret. The four representatives were the truly formidable newcomers of large clans, yet they were completely unknown. Tang Baichen was still somewhat fortunate. Li Yunmu had heard his name from at least one person, that old man, but he had never heard of Han Qingyu and Mo Kangsheng. It was like these people didn't even exist in Heavenly Cloud City. The case of Lin Yuero was even more extreme. Her cultivation was the most terrifying compared to others. She had reached the transcendent layer before even being at the age of 20. She hadn't just entered transcendent layer either, but had instead achieved temporal. It was no wonder then that this woman had been accepted long ago to be the disciple of Blue Cloud Sect's master. Even if only comparing innate talents and comprehension levels, perhaps only Ling Shuang could compete with her. Unfortunately, Ling Shuang had entered the world of cultivation too late. She still hadn't become a flux master. Hidden Rain City's Chu family, Heavenly Dragon City's Tang family, Flying Jade City's Bird Pavilion, Machan City's Mo clan, if Lin Yuero could also be considered as the representative of Blue Cloud Sect, then there were 6 major powers present here. When Li Yunmu glanced at everyone seated around him, he became apprehensive. Of the 10 great citadels of Heavenly Cloud City, the representatives of nearly half of these powers with outstanding reputation had assembled here. When they invited him to come over, what exactly did they intend to do? If they simply wanted to establish friendly relations with the sect standing behind him, then why would they dispatch the number 1 people of their youngest generation? The even more critical question was that with nearly half of the most influential clans present, with what kind of enemy did they plan to deal with? Or it would be better to phrase it as, what level of enemy could make nearly half of Heavenly Cloud City's powers treat it so seriously? Chapter 129, Going Berserk in the Meeting. Rebellion? For a moment, Li Yunmu was completely silent. He couldn't believe that Heavenly Cloud City's lord had the courage to revolt. Central Continent's 3 king cities and 1 supreme central city weren't something that a city lord of a secondary city could contend against. Since Li Yunmu didn't say anything, Mo Kangqiang suddenly spoke up. Presently, you are in danger. The enemy we all want to deal with is also your enemy. He's already been watching you attentively and he will continue to hunt you unless he dies. If not for this reason, we wouldn't have called upon you, a complete stranger, and invited you to join our faction. Li Yunmu didn't respond to it as they had expected. After all, he wasn't a greenhorn anymore. Although there was logic to the statement the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but maybe the other party had just made up a false enemy to scare him into joining their faction. Li Yunmu wasn't stupid to believe them just because. Frankly speaking, he wasn't overly scared. Moreover, he also didn't fear that others would try to do something to him, because presently he had sufficient confidence to deal with danger himself. Even though his cultivation base wasn't very high, but so what? Now he possessed his own heavenly world and also had the two shadows to assist him in battle. He also possessed wings of the wind and had 2 sage-level tools in his reserve. Once he returned to the 5th dimension, he'll be like a dragon who had entered an ocean. If one came, he would kill one, if many came, he would behead all of them. If he met someone he wasn't able to defeat, then wings of the wind would appear, and he would use them to escape far away like a terrified bird. The person who has been watching all this time is the Supreme Lord Sage of Heavenly Cloud City's Fluxer Guild. However, when Lin Yuero revealed the true identity of the enemy operating behind the scenes, Li Yunmu was startled. He was indeed afraid of this person. Naturally, he wasn't truly scared. It was rather just that he had never expected that he would be observed by a sage-level expert. Were they serious when saying that a majestic sage, who had shed all shackles of mortality, would lower himself to this extent? Fluxer Association's sage. A majestic and great sage, why would he be keeping his eyes on a nobody like me? If I'm correct, before I challenged the Tower of Glory, I, Li Yunmu, was just a minor character. Li Yunmu still remained unmoved and looked at everyone with a grim smile. You weren't a minor character even before you challenged Tower of Glory. Back then you weren't. With her hands folded in front of her chest, Han Qingyu icily looked at Li Yunmu. Even if a person who possesses the bloodline of a battle sage has trash innate talent, he will still be a delicious cake in the eyes of all formidable experts under battle sage layer. Yes, according to the information sent back by our spy planted at Heavenly Cloud Steel Castle, Li Yunmu, your present circumstances are extremely dangerous. At the time when you came out of the Tower of Glory, if Elder Sisuero hadn't personally led Imperial Guard troops to receive you, then maybe you would have already ended up in the clutches of some Lord Sage. By now, you might have been refined for your battle sage bloodline, Tang Beichen indifferently added. Who dares? For a moment, a fierce killing intent rose from Li Yunmu's body. That killing intent then seemed to be turning into material form. All the attendants in the mansion's hall were completely terrified and began to withdraw one after another. This time, Li Yunmu was truly shocked. He was infuriated by the disturbing words of the people sitting in front of him. Yes, he was truly shocked and furious. What bullshit battle sage bloodline? He didn't know anything about this, but he could feel the authenticity of the words said by these people. Apparently there was still some great secret hidden in his body. What was this battle sage bloodline which could make anyone under battle sage layer to act like a hungry wolf who had seen flesh? When suddenly confronted with such a situation, how could Li Yunmu not be startled and furious? What angered him even more was that the enemy thought that he was just a sacrificial pig. In a split second, Li Yunmu finally understood why the system had asked him to exchange all the F***ing tower badges for protective and escaping treasures. After being distracted for some time, he finally recovered. Even though he had mistakenly caused the emergence of the mysterious Li sect, but in the eyes of these people who had been following him from the start, it just increased the possibility that he was harboring the battle sage bloodline in his body. System, did you already know that my body had battle sage bloodline? Li Yunmu didn't worry about the response of people present on the scene and initiated this inquiry towards the system through his mind. Battle sage bloodline, he had some idea about it. As the name implied, it meant that the person with it had the blood vessels of a formidable battle sage. Under ordinary circumstances, this wouldn't surpass 3 generations. After them, the battle sage bloodline would continue to become weaker and weaker, until it could no longer even be called such. Thus, if what Lin Yuero and others were saying was correct and Li Yunmu's body really had the battle sage bloodline, then this would mean that either his father Li Zongmin was a battle sage or he also possessed the battle sage bloodline, which was even stronger compared to his. But how could Li Yunmu not know that his father was just someone who had awakened a trace of flux energy, and that was all he possessed? This little bit had allowed him to receive battle soldier's equipment, which then helped him to become a slightly stronger soldier. If he had really possessed the bloodline, he wouldn't have lost his legs at the frontline camp. Thus, the question remained unanswered. His father wasn't a battle sage and also didn't possess the bloodline, so could it be that his grandfather who had died long ago was a battle sage? But this idea was even more absurd, because Li Yunmu's grandfather had died because of the fatigue his body had accumulated by doing hard manual labor. Now, one might as well ask, in this whole world, what could be more hilarious than a battle sage dying from manual labor? Thus, Li Yunmu could never accept that he was a descendant of a legendary battle sage. This was certainly an enormous misunderstanding. As for what use were the battle sage bloodline? If one went by the origin of the word bloodline, then before the Dark Ages, the meaning of bloodline was as implied by the name, there wasn't any complicated meaning to it. In other words, it only represented ordinary blood vessels. However, when the new age of flux energy began and Earth came into contact with higher dimensions, the new, innately formidable life forms began to emerge. From then on, the meaning of the word bloodline became quite serious. Transcendent Flux Master, Temporal Flux Master, Nirvana Flux Master. From the moment a fluxer stepped into the Transcendent Flux Master stage, whether he could achieve the true nirvana at the nirvana layer and attain the body of an ordinary sage, the most important factor which determined this was precisely the bloodline. If one didn't have a formidable bloodline, then even if they had earth-shattering innate talent, they could only stop at nirvana layer. They would never be able to enter the sage layer and become a sage, the pinnacle existence in the present world. Furthermore, there were some differences between the bloodlines of battle sages and bloodlines of innately formidable higher dimensional life forms. This was because the bloodline of a battle sage was the only type of formidable bloodline which had evolved genes because of cultivation. That's right, only the descendants of those people who had cultivated to the level of battle sage possessed bloodlines which were innately formidable. Even the ordinary sage and domain sages didn't have the qualification to accomplish this. Therefore, the bloodline of a battle sage could be considered as the most precious treasure of the entire humanity. Just because it was the only type of human bloodline which had innately formidable nature. This type of innately formidable nature wasn't reflected through the strength of a person, but rather through a kind of instinct that came from the bloodline. Its owner would have an innate talent at comprehending battles and fighting in general. Why were battle sages known as an entity which couldn't be rivaled by other humans? That was because after reaching this stage, they obtained formidable battle talent. Thus, all the fluxers dreamed of possessing the battle sage bloodline. In fact, even supreme existences like ordinary sages and domain sages experienced a spike in their heartbeat at the mention of battle sage bloodline. The reason was really very simple. Because if they could refine this trace of battle sage bloodline, these sage-level experts would gain the opportunity of greatly increasing their chances in reaching the next layer. Terrifying. This was a terrifying bloodline, and also the reason why there were so few battle sages. Each one of them was like a nuclear bomb used in the Dark Ages. Of course, the more formidable a life form is, the less fertile they are. This was a shackle which binded all living creatures. The descendants of battle sages were awfully few in number, and if they appeared after losing the protection and intimidation of their parents, it could be easily imagined how frightening their situations became. Li Yunmu was certain that he didn't possess any battle sage bloodline. The reason why he was believed to possess it though should be related to him comprehending many foundation skills independently. He was forced to accept that this was quite a huge blunder. This was the reason why Li Yunmu, who always was up to mischief and never took anything seriously, had been so shocked and furious. This time, he was truly panicked and enraged to the extreme. Those who dare to steal my blood vessels die, die die. Ding! Host's present mental fluctuations are perfectly suitable to refine the witch fiend's energy. Do you want to immediately refine this portion of dark flux energy? Ding! Because the host's present mental state is extremely suitable for the refinement of the witch fiend energy, the system has independently decided to execute the refining on behalf of the host, since it wants to prevent the host from missing this golden opportunity by being distracted because of anger. Chapter 130, Deity Execution Skill. Following the system's independent decision to merge the witch fiend's energy with Li Yunmu, a ball of underworld blood fiend's flux energy floated out from his storage badge and gradually assimilated into his body. Bang! The blood fiend's energy freely dispersed through Li Yunmu's body. When the thunder energy buried in him sensed this familiar power which had the same origin, it instantly transformed into a thunder snake and began to swim around, trying to come out. Under the sages, everyone is powerless like ants. You're just a trifling low-level cultivator, that's all. In this whole world, there won't be anyone who wouldn't be excited on finding someone with battle sage bloodline to obtain the opportunity to become a battle sage. If I had been in place of that Lord Sage, perhaps you wouldn't be alive now. Tang Beichen sneered while attentively watching Li Yunmu, who seemed to have gone berserk. What a joke, a trifling low-level cultivator also dared to stand in front of a sage. When a sage decides to do something, what does he not dare to do? Really ignorant people are fearless. Just on the basis of this one point, Tang Beichen didn't believe that this Li Yunmu really had some mysterious sect standing behind him. However, who knew what Sister Yuero was thinking when she surprisingly went to receive him and invited him to the city lord's mansion? Not only that, she also allowed this trifling low-level cultivator to enter their group. That's right, today Tang Beichen hadn't come to accept Li Yunmu's entrance into their group, rather he just wanted to expose the truth about this person. Because his family's Tang Ruokan had come in contact with this third disciple of the so-called mysterious Li sect long ago, the Tang family had already conducted an extremely thorough and detailed investigation about him. Their internal investigation report had revealed that although this Li Yunmu possessed battle sage's bloodline, there wasn't even a shadow of some battle sage acting as his backer, let alone speak of some mysterious sect. He had only inherited some good fortune bestowed upon him by his deceased ancestors. There was a high possibility that Li sect's battle sage may have fallen in some higher dimension long ago. Following this logic, everything made complete sense. This line of thought answered all loopholes, like why did Li Yunmu possess skills like Violent Blade or Insect Step or other flux cultivation battle skills, but he himself didn't have any knowledge about the Fluxer world. Today, Tang Beichen had personally come to expose the web of lies created by this person. For a moment Tang Beichen and Lin Qinjiang's gazes met, and both have smiled in a meaningful way towards each other. Their plan was moving without any problem. Even they hadn't expected that it would be so easy to make Li Yunmu go berserk. Since the other party had lost his reason because of anger, then they just needed to add some oil to this fire to guide this battle sage's descendant to the path of his doom. However, Tang Beichen still hadn't taken the last step before he saw the smile on Lin Qinjiang's face suddenly turning into alarm. "Brother Tang, be careful," Lin Qingyang could only warn subconsciously, but it was too late. Li Yunmu, who was already enraged and had merged with the blood fiend's energy just now, instantly emitted a terrifying aura and endless killing intent. In the meantime, his whole body was wrapped around by the energy of the blood fiend. "Since you also have plans for the battle sage bloodline *T in my body, then you also go and die." Suddenly, a war blade with cold thunder wrapped around it appeared in Li Yunmu's hand. The next moment, endless killing intent enveloped everyone present on the scene. Die! A huge projection of an enormous dragon, which appeared like a barbarous god from ancient times, manifested behind him. It accompanied Li Yunmu's overflowing anger and rushed towards Tang Beichen. This enormous projection was tightly wrapped around the thunder blade in Li Yunmu's hand, which suddenly slashed towards Tang Beichen. Not good, this is Deity Executioner. The expression of Lin Yuero, the strongest person present on the scene, suddenly changed. By the time she managed to respond, it was too late. She was just few meters away, but at this moment, in front of Deity Executioner, these few meters were like the distance between heaven and earth. The Blood Fiend's energy filled with frantic killing intent instantly slashed through the space between Li Yunmu and Tang Beichen. With Lin Yuero's temporal layer strength, she could have broken it, but she was late by half a second. The enormous projection behind Li Yunmu's body had already slashed towards the shocked and distracted Tang Beichen. The blade was similar to the projection, it didn't leave any traces behind. It instantly chopped at Tang Beichen, cleaving through the distance. Tang Beichen truly deserved to be counted as one of the most powerful among the newcomers. In a split second, he became aware that his and Lin Qinjiang's plan had gone awry. A golden light shone brightly and golden crystal flux armor covered his body. However, even its formidable defense as well as rainbow crystal flux energy's body protecting cover wasn't of any use. The slash of the enormous projection contained Li Yunmu's endless killing intent. When the image of the blade reached Tang Beichen, his golden crystal flux armor became useless, and so did his rainbow-colored flux energy protective cover. His fierce gaze full of flux energy gradually turned dull and then extinguished. His body was still maintaining the blocking posture of Heavenly Dragon Tang family's tyrannical cross-shaped arms skill, but his breath quickly disappeared, showing no signs of existing in this world anymore. Deity Execution Skill. The legendary Deity Execution Skill. All the people present were foolishly looking at the illusory chop filled with endless killing intent, which attacked not the person but his mind. What crystal armor or flux energy protective cover, in front of this chop attacking the brain, all of them were useless, like fleeting clouds. Similarly, it also confirmed Tang Beichen's words from a few moments ago, that under sage level everyone were just like ants. All of them could be easily killed at any time. Tang Beichen was dead. He had been killed Li Yunmu's one chop while he was in a berserk state. The young prodigy's death wasn't caused by loss of vitality but rather came from his mind. In an instant, Tang Beichen's three energies completely faded away. At this moment, even if a god descended to possess his body, he would still be unable to save him. Li Yunmu's one chop completely removed all traces of his existence in this world. Lin Qingyang watched everything with alarm. He suddenly discovered that his evaluation was wrong. He now felt that Lin Yuero's decision to suddenly change her treatment towards Li Yunmu had been correct. However, everything wasn't complete. Li Yunmu, whose body was releasing endless killing intent, suddenly turned around. The Blood Fiend's energy caused his pupils to turn blood-colored, and a terrifying gaze, like that of a god who one couldn't look directly at, fell on Lin Qinjiang's body. Second chop. Two words were said, sounding as if they had come from the depths below the building. They brought a chill to everyone, and they all involuntarily shuddered. Not good, stay your hand. Lin Yuero was startled. This was the first time she, the proud Dogther of Heaven, felt so helpless. Although she was already at the temporal layer, confronting Li Yunmu's deity execution was still a challenge. She could save herself for sure, but saving another person was extremely difficult. She and Lin Qingyang were only 2 meters away from each other, however, these 2 meters were like the distance between heaven and earth in front of the legendary deity execution. The next instant, Li Yunmu's blade fell down. The projection of the barbarian god coldly descended towards Lin Qingyang. It was over. At this moment, everyone present knew that it was over. Who could have thought that Li Yunmu would just suddenly go berserk, or been able to anticipate that even a temporal flux master Lin Yuero wouldn't be able to stop him from killing Lin Qingyang, the son of Heavenly Cloud City's lord. Once the enraged Li Yunmu decided to kill, he immediately attacked. Frightened by Li Yunmu's slash, Lin Qingyang had already soiled the ground. If even a formidable person like Tang Beichen couldn't escape this calamity after using the supreme skills of the Tang family, then what was he to do? After all, he had advanced his cultivation using all sorts of resources. Having lost any will to resist, he shouted for Lin Yuero with absolute despair, "Sister, save me!